Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're keeping it classy with a modern keyhole vest. There's texture, a wide collar, and the aforementioned keyhole that adds just the right amount of flirtiness. Speaking of, been flirting with the idea of making more? Here's the best place to start. We have hundreds of the best modern crochet tutorials and patterns, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 285 grams of yarn. That's 630 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you have any weird quirks. I like to smell food even if I'm not eating it. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that starts 1 inch underneath the underarm down to where we like the bottom of this top to be. So you can make this cropped or full length. I'd like for mine to be full length. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 61. That's roughly 14 inches or 35 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our row 1. So block off that last chain and chain 1. That chain 1 is our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with our first Suzette stitch, which is 1 single and 1 double crochet into the same chain. So into that chain that we blocked off, start with 1 single, so insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, then also a double crochet into the same chain, so yarn over, into that same chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and that is our first Suzette stitch. We're going to continue this to reach the end of the row. So after every Suzette stitch set that we do, we are going to skip that following stitch because that double crochet counts as that stitch, and if we work directly into there, we will be increasing accidentally. So skip that following chain, into the next with 1 single, into that same chain with a double crochet. From here, continue to skip a chain, into the next, insert with a single, and also with a double until we all have 2 chains left. We made our way all the way down with our first row, leaving the last 2 chains. Now what we're going to do from here is our increase, and what we're going to need to do into that last chain is 1 single, 1 half double, and 1 double crochet. So skip that second to last. Into that last, insert with a single, into that same last chain with a half double, and into that same last chain with a double crochet. Now everyone's first row should have 2 more stitches than the chains that we made. Everyone's row 2 will not have any increases or decreases, so all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and do our Suzette stitches till we have 2 stitches left. So let's just do the first one. Into that first stitch from our previous row, insert with a single and a double, skip 1 stitch into the next with another single and a double. We're going to continue this till we have 2 stitches left, like I said, but just as a really quick tip, each of our Suzette stitch sets that we have will be worked into our previous row's single crochet to get the texture that we want. We are at the end of our row 2. We should all have 2 stitches left, and just to close off this row, since we aren't doing any increases or decreases, we're just going to half double crochet into that last stitch. Now it could possibly look like we just have 1 stitch left, but if you flip your work over, that second stitch that we have might be a little tucked underneath. But what we're going to do, make sure we're skipping that second to last stitch and into the last stitch with just 1 half double crochet. And now at the end of our row 2, we should have the same amount of stitches as our row 1. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So just to get started, on our next odd number row, chain 1, flip our work into that last stitch from our previous row, which is the top of that half double, insert with our first Suzette stitch, and continue on with our Suzette stitch till we have 2 stitches left to increase together once more. We are at the end of our row 3, we should all have 2 stitches left. Just to do our increase together once more, skip that second to last stitch and into the last, insert with a single, with a half double, and with a double crochet, and that is our increase. Again, we should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Then our following row is a non-increase row. So chain 1, flip our work, do our same Suzette stitches all the way down. When we have 2 stitches left, just 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can stretch from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, so roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay. Then I'll meet you back right after an odd number row or along the top, then we can work straight into the shoulders together from there. We are back. We have just completed the underarm portion. I have a total of 7 rows. My width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is make an even number chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. So making sure that our tail end is still 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want that to become too tight or too loose, we're going to make that even number chain, and I've already measured mine out. I need roughly 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain of 22. Now from here we're going to get started on our neckline decrease. So once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now for this portion of the neckline, whenever we're getting started with an even number row or along the top working our way down towards the bottom, we're all going to start with 2 decrease of 2 half double crochets. So how that's going to work is yarn over. Into that chain that we blocked off with the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, and into that following chain as well, insert, pull through for 4 loops. Yarn over, pull through all 4, then we're going to do another decrease of 2 into the following 2 stitches. So yarn over, into that following chain, insert, pull through, next stitch, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. Now we should have 2 stitches so far for this row, then we're going to do our regular Suzette stitches making our way all the way down. So once we finish our 2 decreases that are right next to each other, our following Suzette stitch is going to be worked into that following chain. So just into that next available chain, insert with a single and a double. Then from here, per usual, skip a chain into the next with a single and a double and continue this, making our way all the way down. Once we have 2 stitches left, close off the row with a half double crochet. So we've made our way down with our first neckline row. Now we're going to make our way all the way back up, doing our same Suzette stitches that we've been doing this entire time, now leaving the last 4 stitches because we're going to close off every odd number row with a decrease as well. So we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our second neckline row, leaving the last 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Now we're all going to do a decrease of 3 double crochets. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to skip that following stitch, into that 3rd to last stitch, pull through, into that 2nd to last stitch, pull through, and also into that last stitch, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, leaving us with 2, then yarn over, pull through 2. Now from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So since we're here, we might as well get started on the following even number row. So chain 2 and flip. And remember, every even number row is going to start with 2 decrease of 2 half doubles. So yarn over, into that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, a following one into the next 2 stitches, yarn over, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. Then when we have these 2 decreases next to each other, into that following stitch, our first Suzette stitch, so a single and a double. Then from here, skip a stitch, single and double into the next, and the end of the row is going to end with just 1 half double crochet. Now, like I said, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can stretch over from mid-underarm until we're roughly 1 inch away from the middle of our chest. Then I'll meet you guys back right after an even number row, or along the bottom, then we can get started on the middle cutout detail together. We are back. We have just completed the decrease portion of our neckline. I now have a total of 18 rows. My width is roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here is work on our middle cutout detail. So what we're all going to want to do is put our piece up to ourselves, making sure that the tail end is still roughly 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then what we're going to do is place our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top where we'd like for the cutout to be. Now if you guys would like to show a little bit more, insert your stitch marker lower, or if you'd like to have a little bit more covered, insert your stitch marker higher. I inserted my stitch marker into the 12th stitch from the top, that's roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is the following Suzette stitch row. So since we should all be along the bottom, chain 1, flip our work. Do our Suzette stitch row all the way up until we reach our stitch marker. We are back. I've made my way all the way up with my first cutout row. I put my last half double crochet into the stitch that we have that's right before our stitch marker stitch. Now for this portion of our piece, we aren't going to do any increases or decreases. So simply chain 1, flip our work, and do our Suzette stitch row all the way back down. We're just going to continue to repeat this non-increase / decrease row of our Suzette stitches until we have a portion that can now stretch 1 inch past the middle of our chest. Then I'll meet you guys back right after an odd number row or along the top, then we can get started on the increase of our neckline together from there. We are back. We have just completed the cutout portion of our neckline. Now from here, we're going to work on the increase. So what we're going to do is basically mirror the same amount of rows that we have on this side. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on this side of the cutout. So for those of you that have my numbers, I inserted my stitch marker into the 12th stitch from the top. So over here, I made a chain 12. Now from here, we're going to block off that last chain and do an additional chain 2. That's our turning chain, and we're all going to start with an increase of 4 half double crochets. So how we're going to increase at the beginning of every even number row. Yarn over, and into that first stitch of the row, which is that chain that we blocked off, we're going to insert with 4 half doubles. So insert with 1 half double, same stitch with a second, same stitch with a third, same stitch with a fourth. Then once we have that, we are going to skip 1 stitch, into the next, insert with our Suzette stitch, and from here just continue to do our regular Suzette stitch to reach the end of the row. And since we're working down towards the bottom portion, it does need to be blunt, so just 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. Now to get started on the following row, chain 1, flip our work. Do our Suzette stitches all the way back up, leaving the last 2 stitches, and I'll show you how to increase at the end of every odd number row as well. So we are back, and we've made our way all the way up with our second increase neckline row. We should have all left the last 2 stitches. Now into the last 2 stitches, since we did a decrease into every row here, we are going to do an increase into every row on this side. So the increase at the end of every odd number row is we're going to skip that second to last, and into the last it's going to be 1 single, 1 half double, and 1 double crochet all into that same last stitch. Now for this portion, since we're increasing into every row, we should have 2 more stitches than our previous row, and we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows for the same amount of rows that we have for the decrease side of our neckline. Once we have the same amount of rows, I will meet you guys back so we can get started on our underarm together. So we are back. The neckline increase portion is now complete. I have a total of 34 rows. My width is roughly 9 inches or 23 centimeters. Now we're going to finish up with our underarm. How that's going to work is we're all going to start by inserting our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. For those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 22. So along this side, counting from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 22nd stitch. From here, since we should all be along the bottom, do our same Suzette stitches, making our way all the way up, leaving the last 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we've made our way all the way up with our first underarm row, leaving the last 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Now we're going to close off this with a decrease of 3 double crochets. Starting with the yarn over, skip that 4th to last stitch. Into the 3rd to last, insert pull through. 2nd to last, pull through, and last, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through the first 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Now from here, we're only going to be decreasing into every other row because on the other underarm portion, we increase into every other. So from here, chain 1, flip our work, and make our way all the way down with our Suzette stitches. From here, continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first underarm portion that we did. When we do a chain up 1 and cut, and I'll meet you guys back to get started on the back panel. We are back and the entirety of our front panel is complete. Now my front panel is roughly 11 inches or 28 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on the back panel, and it's going to be done pretty much the same way as the front panel. The only difference is that we aren't going to do our cutout. So as you guys can see, I already have mine completed, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. We're all going to start by making the same chain that we did for the front panel's underarm. We're going to do the same exact rows that we did for the underarm portion, plus the chain. We're going to do the same amount of decreased neckline rows that we did for the front panel, but once we get to this last row right here, we are not going to be skipping the amount of stitches for the cutout. We're just going to be working straight across for the same amount of rows that we have on this side. Then from here, just work straight into the increased portion of our neckline. Same exact way, we should have the same exact amount of numbers that we had on this side. Then complete with the underarm portion. Once we have both of them completed, do a chain up one and cut. Then I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. So once we have both of our panels completed, the next thing we're going to do is seam up our sides. So we're going to place our front panel on top of our back panel, insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back, and do a single crochet seam. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of one to secure, then just single crochet into both panels at the same time. Finding our first stitch within the front panel, insert, first stitch within the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Doing that again, next stitch into the front, insert, next stitch into the back, insert, and single crochet. And we're just going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left, do a chain up one and cut, then repeat on the other side, and I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up our sides. Now we're going to get started on our neckline. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, meaning the seams that we just did along the side is now along the inside. Then, taking a look at our back panel first, insert our hook into the top corner stitch of our back panel detail. Then we're going to be working all the way down and across. So what we're going to do is just put 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way up to this top corner over here. I'm going to pull my working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now this is my first side row. I'm going to insert with 2 single crochets. Find that top loop and insert with 1 single. Into that same top loop with a second single crochet. Now doing that again. This is my following side row. So I'm going to find that top loop, insert with 1, into that same top loop with 2 single crochets. And that's it. We're going to continue putting 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way up to this corner stitch, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We've just made our way across the top of our back panel. Now we're going to get started on the front panel. So just start by flipping your work over so that now we're looking at the front panel. So now that we're looking at the front panel, all we're going to do is start by inserting our hook into that first side row within the front panel. That's going to count as a connection and also as our first single crochet row. So into that first top loop, insert with 1 single, that's our connection. Put into that same top loop, insert with a second single crochet. And making our way down, we are still putting 2 single crochets into every side row. Once we reach our last side row right before our cutout, I will meet you guys back. So we've just made our way all the way down with our single crochets until we reach our last side row. Now what we're going to do from here is make a chain to connect this portion of our front panel over to this corner over here. So just so we can figure out how many chains we're going to do, we're all going to count the amount of these non-increased, non-decreased rows that we have. So how we're going to figure out how many chains we're going to have to make is just count the amount of rows that we have, and we're just going to alternate between 1 to 2 stitches for every side row. So for those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 5 side rows right here. So just to show you guys what they look like, this is my first side row. One should have a bigger gap. This is my following side row, and it should end on a little cluster like this. This is my next, a gap, next a little cluster, and then my last one, since I only made 5 rows, a little gap. So I'm just going to count those. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've counted out 7 stitches for this cutout portion, so I'm going to go ahead and make a chain 7, which I have already done. Once we have our chain, we're going to single crochet it into our first side row right here, and that single crochet is going to count as a stitch and as a connection as well. So this is my first side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet. That's to connect, and another single crochet into that same side row, and working our way back up. Continue to put 2 single crochets into every side row. So I've made my way all the way up with my single crochet row. Now, I did slip stitch it into that chain space that we made when we got started on this row. And what we're going to do from here is make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. Now, since we gave ourselves a decent amount of space for the width of our collar, we did want this to be wider. I already measured mine out. I want mine to be roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 15. So now that we have our chain, we're going to do our slip stitch row all the way down. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So yarn over and gently pull through everything on our hook. We want to make sure that we're pulling through gently, otherwise the falling row will be too tight to work into. Again, into that next chain, insert, pull through gently, and continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We've just put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now we're all going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch, flip our work, and now 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, not into any of those slip stitches into the base, insert into that back loop, then yarn over and gently pull through everything. Once more into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything. Continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We've made our way all the way down, and we are nearly finished with our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch, still doesn't count as a stitch. Then since we're here to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and from here just continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches into the base left to work into, I'll meet you back to seam it up. Alright, so we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into. So now what we're going to do from here is our outside loop slip stitch seam. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. So we're all going to start by inserting our hook into that first stitch, inserting into that front loop only. Then into the back panel, inserting our hook into that back loop only. Then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Now this seam is supposed to look like another back loop slip stitch row, so let's do one more. Into that next stitch's front loop, we're going to insert. Into that next stitch's back loop within the back panel, insert, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. We have just seamed up our neckline, and now we're just going to single crochet along our armholes to clean it up. So we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert your hook into the side row that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Then we're just going to single crochet all the way up and around. It's going to be pretty simple. When we're working into our side rows, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, then just 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and around, then alternate, making our way back down. Let's just do the first few rows so you can see where the first few side rows are. Now this is my first side row right here. Like I said, we are going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. We are going to start with 2 single crochets. So we're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now into this first side row, we're going to insert into that top loop with 1, into that same top loop with a second single crochet. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1. Let's do that again. This is my next side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2. So there's 1. There is 2. This is my next side row. Find that top loop and insert with just 1. We're just going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more, slip stitch into that chain space. Then repeat everything we did here on the other side. We are back and we have just completed single crocheting along our armholes on both sides, and now we are all done. Now the last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!